Matt, you brought up Voight comp test.
Yeah.
And I think that this is actually a perfect segue into the reading series for this week, which is this big New Yorker profile of Curtis Yarvin, also known as Mencius Moldbug, the dark elf of the Shire. Because in the article, like, I mean, look, it's a very long article. I've pulled some highlights, but like, it lays out his sort of techno-monarchist political ideology. It lays out his, connections to his fans in Silicon Valley who see in him a kind of like like an intellectual veneer to the idea that like democracy should do away with voting and just put tech people in charge, like Peter Thiel.
Good idea. Let's try it. What the hell?
But in the article, like basically I would say that Yarvin comes across as a sort of like a child prodigy that has like settled into an adulthood of extreme insecurity and peevishness, because like throughout the article, like he increasingly gets like more and more nervous about how he's coming across and like demands more and more control over the profile that he agreed to do in the New Yorker. And at one point in the interview, I'm just reading from the article here. He says, this is the person writing the profile. She writes, he said that he was coming to see me, on the other hand, as an NPC or non-player character. He proposed giving me a Voight-Kampff test, the fictional exam in Blade Runner used to distinguish androids from humans. His version would involve the two of us debating the blank slate theory versus racism and recording the conversation. Some of his suggestions were intriguing. He floated the idea of staging a debate with one of his ex-girlfriends. And if there's
what's the topic of that debate? Was the dick good?
If there are any, look, I know that we've already received our profile in the New Yorker, and we're probably not getting another one. But if there is anyone on the New Yorker staff or wants to pitch another profile of me to the New Yorker, I will furnish you with any of my ex-girlfriends, and I will have a debate with any of them for the edification of the literary magazine reading public.
What is the dick bomb? The public deserves to know. It's in the public interest.
I'm not lying, Jack. Her back walls are blown out.
I think
I put that pussy to sleep, Jack.
I think this whole profile, like, that's a recurring theme in this profile, that he's like, it's something that Yarvin like enthusiastically agreed to do. Like when someone profiles you in a major magazine, it's not like they show up to your house and you're like, oh no, I've been selected. I can't get rid of them. I guess I have to do this. It's like, no, you have to make a lot of affirmative choices and agree to have this person follow you around, presumably because you think you're going to come off as like a cool guy. So he did this and he curated his activities for the next 4 days, which included like 3 or 4 like crying jags for some reason.
Yeah. There's 3 incidents of him crying in this article.
And his even while he's writing the article, he's like, why are you doing this to me? And it's like, it's the same thing as the guys who are like, I had to wear a dashiki and go to work. And that's why I'm rebelling against wokeness. You guys made me wipe out all my groceries with rubbing alcohol. And it's like, no, you did all those things. You chose to do all of this. You embarrassed yourself. And now you're going, well, we have to kill all these people because they embarrassed me.
Yeah.
After a series of choices that you made.
So like I said, like there's a lot of it in the beginning of the article that like, gets into his background and like, we've talked about him before and we've talked about his ideas about the cathedral and, like his sort of, the techno-monarchism. But I want to get into this piece right now where it says, earlier this year, Yarvin and I had lunch in Washington, D.C., where he had come to celebrate the regime change. He was in his usual getup. Blue jeans, Chelsea boots, a rumpled dress shirt under a motorcycle jacket. After taking a few bites of cheeseburger topped with crispy onions, he pushed his plate away. Last year, he had explained, he had decided to start taking an Ozempic-like drug after a debate with the right-wing commentator Richard Hanania about the relative merits of monarchy and democracy. I destroyed him in almost every way, Yarvin said, nudging a tomato with his fork. But he had one huge advantage, which is that I was fat and he was not. So, like, this is the first indication of like this. It's like, look, like this guy has the, has his acolytes. He's got the, Peter Thiel. He's got like sort of like he's become the kind of Machiavelli to all of these like weird crypto Nazi Silicon Valley types. but like he's really worried that Richard Hanania was more fuckable than him on a debate stage. And by the way, I know like what were those two guys debating? Who's more dysgenic?
I saw people defending this and a lot of like, silly sounding pull quotes as Yarvin making fun of himself. And they were like, oh, they don't understand this because they could never laugh at themselves like he is. That argument would hold more weight if Yarvin had not spent this entire week. Every bit of his output is him complaining about this article and like retweeting people defending. Like you don't have a sense of humor about yourself. That's not how you behave.
He's been posting nonstop about this article, and he would like everyone to know that he's actually not mad.
Yeah,
he's actually not mad, and he really made that New Yorker look foolish by agreeing to be profiled by them.
You know how someone's really like struggling and like really going through it when they retweet posts that are like, well, I've actually met this guy, and I borrowed a cup of sugar from him. That's the guy I know. Just little anecdotes about you being... Yeah.
If you'd met him in person, nice. You know he's not actually that ugly.
Yeah, no, I saw one that was like, he gave me like parenting advice, and he barely even knew me. And that's the kind of guy he was. When you're retweeting just like general praise about your personality and your character, you are in the pits of despair. I have never seen anyone do that and gone, all right, they've got this figured out.
Because there's one point in the article where he's like turning. I'll get to my favorite part in the article, but the end of the article is like he turns to the person profiling him, or he turns to the two documentary filmmakers following him around, and he goes, "That was good, right? That was good. Okay, yes, it was good."
That's the other thing. So in the profile, the documentary filmmakers make fun of him in this way that I think is hilarious. But I saw Yarvin and his followers like mocking those guys, like the two like 20-somethings who were filming him. And they're like, oh, like loser aspiring filmmakers. And again, this would hold more weight if Yarvin didn't enthusiastically agree to have them make a movie about him. Again, these are all, you chose to have all these people in your life.
The documentary filmmakers who were following him around, it says, two millennial filmmakers who were shooting a documentary about his life. Their goal was to make a naturalistic character study in the style of Grey Gardens, in which Brunn put it, the camera just happens to be around. Like, did they pitch that to Yarvin like that? Like, we really want to do for you what we did with Grey Gardens did for those baddie ladies on Long Island.
My favorite intellectuals, the ladies in Grey Gardens.
Yeah.
But again, a choice he made. It's like all the people who Facebook guys that we love, who talk about how everyone they know, everyone in their life is a piece of shit liar, cheat, who takes advantage of them, unaware that they are making commentary on people that they went out of their way to selectively put in their lives. This is the highest end example of that. This type of behavior.
And it's just like, it's the retweeting of praise, but like the seeking of approval from other people to be like, yeah, you actually are, you're a cool genius. Like the next paragraph says, the injections seem to be working. As I ate, Yarvin's phone filled with messages, some of them complimenting his glow up.
Oh God.
Have you seen him? I mean, like, maybe he's lost weight, but have you seen him recently? He's not exactly glowing.
I actually extra surprised because I've heard Curtis Yarvin. It's like, oh, she's a weedy nerd, It's like she's thinny, skinny. And it's like I just assumed he was skinny. It's like, no, he was fat. It's like, God damn, how do you do that? It's like, how are you fat? What's the deal? You're a geek. You're chugging like a Soylent or whatever.
That sort of is like the ethos of this era. Guys who are on stimulants and appetite suppressors who eat through them.
It goes, here's another very telling quote. It says, that morning, the Times magazine had published an interview with him accompanied by a moody black and white portrait. Until recently, Yarvin, with his frazzled curtain of shoulder-length hair and ill-fitting wardrobe, had seemed indifferent to his appearance. Now wearing his leather jacket, he glared out at the reader through his stylishly tousled hair. His friend, Steve Saylor, a writer for white nationalist websites, said he looked like the fifth Ramon. Like, okay,
the most handsome band in the world.
Yeah, it's like, okay, imagine New Yorkers doing another profile of us, and then they're like, among several sources commented that Will Menaker looked like one of the Stooges. No, not the band, just the three guys.
Felix Biederman showed up in what he termed a leather kimono. During our coffee meeting, he showed me a text message from his friend attesting to the fact that he went to his house and he had hand soap in his guest bathroom. That would go in the article. That I put hand soap in the guest bedroom.
There's a throwaway detail about his time at the studying computer science at the University of California, Berkeley. Former peers told me that he wore a bicycle helmet in class and seemed eager to show off his knowledge to the professor. Cue 1 million retweets. I was hanging out with Curtis last night, and he doesn't wear a bicycle helmet indoors anymore.
In the article, he says, well, actually, there was just one time where I forgot to take it off, and they thought it was funny, and I thought it was funny too. Which is why I remember this, every exact detail of this thing that happened like 30 years ago.
Now, we all know that he coined or claims to have coined the sort of take the red pill metaphor for, the dark enlightenment or neo-reactionary thought. But his red pill moment, this was the piece in the article that actually kind of stunned me, because he has one of the most unique red pilling stories for a guy who's on the dissident avant-garde right.
Oh yeah, this
I've
is
ever
really
considered.
stupid.
This is amazing. It says, Yarvin traces his own red pill moment to the presidential election of 2004. As many of his peers are being driven to the left by lies about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, Yarvin was pulled in the opposite direction by fabrications of a different sort. The Swift boat conspiracy theory pushed by veterans allied with the George W. Bush campaign, who claimed that the Democratic candidate John Kerry had lied about his service in Vietnam. It seemed obvious to Yarvin, who believed the accusations, that once the truth emerged, Kerry would be forced to drop out of the race. When that didn't happen, he began to question what else he'd naively taken on trust. Facts no longer felt stable. How could he be confident in what he'd been told about Joseph McCarthy, the Civil War, or global warming? What about democracy itself? As after years of energetic debates in the comment sections of other people's blogs, he decided to start his own. It did not lack for ambition. The first post began, "The other day I was tinkering around in my garage and I decided to build a new ideology." I fucked around and made a new ideology.
Oh my God.
Getting red pilled by the 2004 presidential election and the Swift boat veterans for truth. I thought this guy was an edgy, outre, avant-garde thinker. This is Facebook boomer parent shit.
Yeah, you may wonder how I got into eugenics and monarchism. Well, it all started when I saw liberals lying about No Child Left Behind.
Yeah,
but it comes up in his back and forth with the reporter, and he goes, "Well, how come the media, they won't admit that John Kerry or anyone else went on secret missions in Cambodia?" And it's gee, I don't know. That story only came out in 1971. Seymour Hersh broke that fucking 50 years ago.
Take the purple heart pill. Going ahead, I really like this, the way it he sketches out his sort of vision of an ideal society. So this quote says, following Hop, referring to Hans Hermann Hop, a guy we've talked about years ago on the show, Yarvin proposes that nations should eventually be broken up into a patchwork of statelets, like Singapore or Dubai, each with its own sovereign ruler. The eternal political problems of legitimacy, accountability, and succession would be solved by a secret board with the power to select and recall the otherwise all-powerful CEO of each sovereign corporation, or SovCorp. How the board would be selected is unclear, but Yarvin has suggested that airline pilots, a fraternity of intelligent, practical, and careful people who are already trusted on a regular basis with the lives of others, what's not to like, could manage the transition between regimes. To prevent a CEO from staging a military coup, the board members would have access to cryptographic keys that would allow them to disarm all the government weapons, from nuclear missiles to small arms, with the push of a button.
Yeah, I got the Democratic sign.
We're coming up on a military coup. If you could just turn your head outside the window, you'll be seeing we'll be pushing the cryptographic key and launching every nuclear missile on the planet at the same time.
So in order for this to work, we need to invent something where every gun in America has a bioscan thing and can be turned off remotely. That's these guys can turn off the military's guns.
I watched Mission Impossible 3 and War on the Algorithm. I could have sworn that alternate key, fighting the key and
Right.
place and like access to the algorithm. So he's full on lifting the plot to action movie, Mission Impossible 14 or whatever.
So yeah, he needs the algorithm. He needs the key that Ethan Hunt's trying to get. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ripped off.
Just turn off the nuclear missiles.
Yeah.
And then the Council of Airline Pilots will appoint a new CEO. Problem solved. Then it gets into his forays into race science. And it says here, as Yarvin came to see it from his online research, these genetic differences contributed to and conveniently helped explain away demographic differences in poverty, crime, and educational attainment. In this house, we believe in science. Race science, he wrote last year. For several hours, Yarvin shuffled through his pitches for strongman rule, like an auctioneer desperate to clinch a sale. I listened patiently, though I was often puzzled by his factual distortions and peculiar asides. What is the right policy in a completely new from scratch regime for African Americans? He wondered out loud at one point. At first, this seemed like a sequitur. I'd been pressing him on how he would define success in this second Trump administration. Answering himself, he said that the obvious solution to the problems of inner city drug abuse and poverty would be to put the church blacks in charge of the ghetto blacks. Yarvin, who is an atheist, is not particularly interested in theocratic rule, but he advocates creating different legal codes to govern different populations. To keep the ghetto blacks in line, he went on, they should be forced to live in a traditional way, like Orthodox Jews or the Amish. The approach that the 20th century took is, if we could just make the schools good enough, they would all turn into Unitarians, he said. If you've seen The Wire and lived in Baltimore, both of which I have, that does not seem to work at all.
Oh my God.
I like that he added and lived in Baltimore too. Because I think he knew if he said, if you've seen The Wire like I have, then you would know that this is incorrect. Black people should be Amish.
That's very revelatory. I mean, this is the main thrust of this, right? Is that sort of like Trumpism, there's no central part of this ideology that you can pin down and say is, in the way that you could say that, like, okay, communism is the workers own the means of production, and there's either like a centralized way of governing, or with like a Singapore type place that there's like free flow of capital and individuals, but incredibly harsh like civic laws. With this, it's just like, oh, whatever new tech thing, we have that plus a king. But the actual attraction of it for Yarvin and guys like him is that it takes all like the forms of being a lib, but it just attaches it to like garden variety Republican racism.
Yeah, that like I had the same thought reading this article, is that like for the readership of the New Yorker, the kind of techno-fascism that Yarvin is pitching here is not too different from what they believe in and want, but like he's just adding this race science shit and stuff about like elves and stuff to pitch it to, I don't know, like the people he thinks are cool.
But there's like a distinct late 20 or mid 2010s nerd liberalism to it. It's basically the unstated aspect.
Magneto was right.
Exactly. The unstated aspect that it's communicating to like computer guys is, okay, you can still compare everything to Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and you can like say that you're Magneto, and you can talk about how you've seen The Wire, but but in service of like state enforced eugenics.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear a NASCAR hat. You don't have to do any of that. You could still be an annoying computer guy.
Well, it says here, recently Yarvin has taken to describing himself as a dark elf whose role is to seduce the high elves.
How is this different than people saying that they're Gryffindor and that Trump is Slytherin? It's the exact same forms.
He says, high elves, blue state elites, by planting acorns of dark doubt in their high golden minds. In this Tolkien-inspired metaphor, red state conservatives are hobbits who should submit to the absolute power of a new ruling class made up, unsurprisingly, of dark elves.
In place of a dark lord, you would have a queen! Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn!
He didn't always express himself so quaintly. In 2011, the day after the far-right terrorist Anders Behring Breivik killed 69 people, many of them teenagers, at a summer camp in Norway, Yarvin wrote, "If you are going to change Norway into something new, you need the present ruling class of Norway to join and follow you, or at least you'll need their children." He praised Breivik for targeting the right group, communists, not Muslim, but condemned his methods. Rape is beta. Seduction is alpha. Don't slaughter the youth camp. Recruit the youth camp.
What? Oh my god!
Just put on a leather jacket and like start talking about elves and shit. That's what kids like.
Is he saying that like Brevik should have become a Discord moderator?
Yeah, I think so.
Groom them, then everyone will love you.
Going ahead here, it says, we were in London where he was attending the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, a conservative conference co-founded by psychologist Jordan Peterson. Yarvin described Peterson to me as a dandy with a weird narcissistic energy coming off of him. That's rich considering he breaks down into tears 3 times in this article.
Yeah, they're the same guy. Again, like modern conservatism, it's all fat guys calling a different fat guy fat.
Once again, back to Elon Musk and Trump.
Yeah.
Now it says accompanying Yarvin on his travels were the filmmakers who were doing a Grey Gardens style documentary about him. It wasn't going to plan. Yarvin kept repeating the same monologues, which meant that so much of the footage was the same. The filmmakers worried that his racist remarks would turn viewers off. One afternoon in London, Diaz had filmed Yarvin getting his portrait painted with Lord Maurice Glassman, a post-liberal political theorist who had been called Labour's MAGA Lord for his support of Brexit and his ongoing dialogue with figures like Steve Bannon. At one point in their discussion, Yarvin had pulled out his iPhone to show Glassman that he'd hacked the chatbot Claude to get it to call him the N-word.
Awesome.
And then he says, I didn't use the word in the spirit of a Southern plantation owner. No, you're using it in the spirit of, yourself. You don't have to be a Southern plantation owner. It goes on to talk about his current girlfriend and ex-girlfriend. I don't know if it's the current or ex one who hooked up with him because she wanted high IQ children. That was boring. Yarvin often criticizes academics for treating history like a Marvel movie with oversimplified heroes and villains. But it's unclear.
You should treat it like Lord of the Rings then.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. You're a dark elf. Like, fuck off.
And it says, it's unclear what he adds to the picture by calling Napoleon a startup guy.
Oh, man. Sometimes the New Yorker reminds you why you pay for a subscription.
Or she stole my jokes. History on the Segway. What the fuck?
At this point in the article, he starts to get like more and more concerned that he's not coming across like a dark dissident genius and coming across actually like kind of like a weird nerd and also kind of like a crackpot, just like as you're right, Felix, a version of every liberal that he's seeking to kind of like inveigh against or sort of shock with his like crazy ideas about race and eugenics. But like it mostly seems kind of like a desperate plea for attention and kind of like trying to find the next edge for kind of like a next new authentic organic personality or ideology that he's gonna tinker around with. And then he starts sort of challenging the reporter to like be more adversarial with him and to debate him. He tries to he urges her to watch the movie The Lives of Others about the East German Stasi.
Good movie.
He sends her poems and stuff. So here's where it gets to my favorite part of the article. This is when him and the documentary filmmakers and his current girlfriend or fiance are in France, and he drives them in a car to an impromptu visit, a sort of a surprise visit for them, to this French Nazi named Camus, no relation, who basically coined the Great Replacement theory. So he's going to sort of be hosted by him at his country home in France. Here's how it goes. Over several glasses of champagne, Yarvin fired a series of questions at Camus, though he rarely waited long enough for his host to give a full answer. What did Camus think of Philip Pétain, Charles de Gaulle, Napoleon III, Napoleon I, Ernst Jünger, Ernst von Salomon, Ezra Pound, Basil Bunting? More than an interaction, Yarvin, the former trivia champion, seemed to want a pat on the head for his display of learning. After we headed downstairs for lunch, strips of sizzling duck, a Keys Lorraine, red wine, Yarvin resumed his cross-examination. Did Camus rate Thomas Carlyle? Michel Houellebecq? Louis XIV? What would he say to Charles Maurras if he were alive today? What would Dostoevsky have to have the thought about the COVID lab leak theory?
What about Pepe Le Pew?
Yeah, I feel like this is like a kid quizzing you about what you think about their favorite TV show.
Yeah, a kid who like read an encyclopedia when he was bored. And it reminds me of show off like new What do you think about the Panic of 1893? Like, okay, you clearly just found out about that.
He reminds me of the kid from Jurassic Park who won't shut up to Sam Neill about dinosaurs.
Have you heard about this thing in Omni? About this meteor making all this heat, and it made a bunch of diamond dust. And that turns to weather, and they died because of the weather. And then my teacher told me about this other book by a guy named Backer, and
he's like, so this guy Bacher wrote another book about how they all died because of disease. What do you think about that?
Do you remember the thing we were talking about? The thing with like Zuckerberg and Rogan, that guy on YouTube, Elephant Graveyard, termed like social transitioning, debuting your new guy. That's why Yarvin gets to be a courtier to Teal, because he was the first guy to do that. When he said he was in his garage tinkering with a new ideology, he really meant I was in the garage tinkering with the new guy I'm going to become.
I was in my garage ordering a leather jacket.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So then it says, Camus let out a high-pitched giggle whenever Yarvin asked a particularly odd question. But he was baffled by his guest's repeated inquiries about Brigitte Macron, the French First Lady, who Yarvin suspected was actually a man. We are dealing with the most important thing in the history of the continent, Camus exclaimed, referring to the rise of non-white immigration to Europe. What does it matter if Miss Macron is a man or a woman? After dessert, coffee, and rum from Guadalupe, it was time for an evening stroll. Carrying a wooden cane, Camus led Yarvin through the small town of Pleylu. Spring had arrived early. A cherry tree was blossoming with little flowers. As they passed the local church, Yarvin took out his phone to show Camus a photo of the toddler he shares with Laurenson. The mother of the child was not my wife, he said confidingly. A moment later, he was reading a poem by C.P. Cafe, in tears once again. The visitor. This is what Camus writes on his blog the next day after Yarvin leaves. Quote, the visitor spoke without interruption from his arrival to his departure for 5 hours, very quickly and very loudly, interrupting himself only for curious fits of tears when he spoke of his deceased wife, but also, more strangely, certain political situations.
And this is, I'm so glad they did this, because it's a perfect, like, so illustrative. Like, an old style racist European conservative meeting an American conservative who thinks he's that. And the entire time, the American conservative just asks him about like stupid Facebook shit he'd seen.
Yeah. I didn't get to the quote, but basically Yarvin starts crying at this French Nazi's house because he imagines his kids being killed in a white genocide. It's like, come on. Don't you have to have a little stoicism if you're going to be like the dark elf of the new Dark Enlightenment?
Just imagine getting pussy. just start for there. Just be it and believe it. You know,
see it and do it.
He defended himself on Twitter about that specific thing. He said, "Oh yeah, it's so embarrassing to take a political situation seriously." It's like, no, you're imagining.
You imagined a scary thing happening and started crying because you got too scared.
If that's a political situation, then I'm going to become president and make a State of the Union speech where I break down in tears imagining my kids in the movie Final Destination 9. Because it's the same thing.
The profile closes. As we headed to the car, this is from leaving the French Nazi's house. As we headed to the car, Yarvin was buzzing with boyish excitement about his performance. He turned to me and the filmmakers. Was that good? He asked. Was that good?
Oh my God.
And, like, you know, I mean, like he has the same kind of peevish insecurity as every other sort of public intellectual, lib or conservative. But like, I guess just like the New Yorker, like a profile for this. I think it's funny because they kind of humiliated him with this article, but like I think the joke is kind of on their readership, because I think if they were to like really look at themselves in the mirror, they wouldn't find themselves all too different than Curtis Yarvin.
Oh yeah, no, it's the same type of like self-flattery and obsession with pop culture,
and
comparing
trivia,
themselves.
and, like, and a belief that like there's a natural hierarchy and like called the meritocracy, at which you just happen to find yourself at exactly the right IQ point to be like the perfect conduit for.
Yeah, and that intelligence is just simply familiarity with events and figures.
Exactly. Like, yeah, you all know who Michelle Welbeck is.
I wish he had like a diary we could access, because I want to know like how he thought this would go. He definitely saw himself like outwitting the New Yorker in some way. And I think, I don't know, he expected them to just come to his house and be like, how dare you think these dangerous things?
Well, and also like his whole ideology is based on the idea that like there's the cathedral, the sort of reality management field of like the media and academia and like liberal customs and manners and values that sort of enforces this artificial hegemony over our behavior, and that like he is the dark elf coming to like overturn all of this. And then when the New Yorker, like the house magazine of the cathedral, asks to profile you, you get scared and indignant that they're not like collaborating with you more on like articulating your grand vision and taking you seriously as like a thinker and writer.
Yeah.
As you're like giggling as you look at the N-word on your phone, you're like, I made ChatGPT call me the N-word.
This is like if Legolas emptied his entire quiver of arrows at like a level 1 orc and missed every shot, and took an axe to the gut and was like, I actually won that.
No, but you're right. It's like seeing everything through a pop culture lens and just being like an overly intelligent child who enters into adulthood completely unprepared for the real world. And then like using and having that kind of bitterness inform the rest of your life in politics. Like it's not too far off from most Kamala Harris supporters.
I mean, yeah, the two options are like gifted kid esoteric fascism and gifted kid like liberal imperialism.
Well, like Welcome Fest.
Yeah, Welcome Fest.